Hi everyone, I'm Mr. Myers and welcome to another episode of Mr. Myers Minis. Today we are going to be talking all about flowers. So, what is a flower? If you were thinking of a way for plants to produce seeds, you would be correct. Certain plants called angiosperms produce flowers which, once fertilized, turn into seeds. And some flowers even produce something really tasty. Can you think of some things that you eat that might have come from a flower? If you were thinking of anything that has seeds in it when you eat it, like an apple or an orange or a banana or even a tomato, those are all fruits and they all came from a flower. Now, not all fruits and vegetables that we eat come from flowers, but many do. The rule of thumb is if it has a seed, more than likely it came from a flower. All right, so we are going to start to identify some of the main parts of a complete flower. And for this, really all you need is just your eyes. And what I like to do as well is I like to make sketches of the flower parts when I'm dissecting them so that I can remember them even better and go back to a resource for them if I want to dissect a different flower. All right, so let me switch my camera over here and we can start to identify the parts of a flower. Now, I've already cut into this flower, and if you choose to cut into your flower, you'll want to have an adult help you out with that. But let's go over some of the main parts. So, as you can see, the main showy part of a flower is the petal right here. And this long, big part of this tulip flower has a very large, showy petal that attracts pollinators, or animals and insects that would go and visit the flower and help it create seeds. And the center of it is almost like a bullseye. I'll show you this one right here. This one obviously hasn't been cut into, but you can see that the center of it is like a bullseye. And one of the first things as a bee or a butterfly comes into a flower that it would hit would be the pistil. And this whole thing right here is the pistil. Now at the top of the pistil we have the stigma. And if you touch the stigma, it's actually kind of sticky. Can anyone think of a reason why it might be sticky? If you were thinking to have the pollen stick to the stigma, you would be right. So the pollen can be found within the stamen, which is this whole part right here. At the top of the stamen, we have the anther, which has the pollen grains on it right here. These are the things that make you sneeze if you have allergies or something like that. And then this long part right here is called the filament, and it basically supplies nutrients to produce the pollen grains up here. But as the pollinator comes into the flower, it goes zoop, and it touches that, and it goes down here. And down here is where the nectar is produced. The nectar produces that sweet aroma that attracts the pollinator to the flower, and it drinks the nectar. And as it's wiggling back up, it brushes up along the anther right here and the stamen, and then those pollen granules get stuck, and there's actually one stuck right there, and they get stuck to the stigma found in the pistil. And then, if that pollen grain is successful, it travels down the style right here into the ovary, and the ovary is this part right here. And within the ovary is the ovule, which if this was a mature one, you could see the ovule, but it's kind of a little immature. And if that pollen grain is able to get its pollen down into the ovule, that is where the seed can be produced. And sometimes in certain plants, the ovary actually expands and turns into a really delicious part of what we call the fruit that us and other animals would like to eat. All right, and of course, on the outside here, we have I'll show it to you on this one. It's a little easier to see, but we have the stem right here, which provides nutrients to the flower, and then the sepal, which is this part right here. And the sepal kind of acts to protect the flower when it's immature so it can bud. And within the stem, you can actually see, I don't know, it's going to be hard to see right here, but you can actually see the xylem and phloem that's in there. It's very hard to see with my camera, but you can see it if you use your eye or a hand lens. And you can see where the xylem and the phloem and even the cambium are within the stem. And the xylem lets the sugars come up to the plants and the nutrients, and the phloem allows the water to flow up to the plant's areas that it needs to get the water and nutrients to. All right. So that is basically a plant dissection 101, and you can get even more into it as you get better, and you can even choose to dissect smaller flowers, such as these ones right here, which you can already see parts of the stamen and also parts of the pistil if you look close enough. And of course, you can see the petals, which are the colorful part of the flowers that protect what's inside the flower. All right. Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed that mini flower dissection and identification. And don't forget, when you're doing a dissection and identification, it oftentimes helps to have a diagram that's in front of you so that you don't get lost along the way of identifying. And if you draw or sketch what you're seeing, it will help, and label it. It will help you remember those parts of the flower. All right. Well, I want to conclude in asking everyone why they think flowers might be important. Well, if you were thinking that many different animals rely on flowers in order to reproduce and live, you would be correct. Many, many different animals, insects, they actually rely on certain types of flowers in order to get their food, or some insects even lay their eggs only in certain types of flowers. So that is why flower diversity or plant diversity is super important, because one type of flower might have one type of animal that relies on that flower to either reproduce or to have a food source. And also, humans rely on flowers too to have a nutritious source of food. All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed that, and tune in next time for another episode of Mr. Meyer's Minis.